So, I've always been into theater. Since I was in elementary school, I've been doing all sorts of plays, musicals, concerts, and all sorts of performances in my school and at my church. I've always been performing, whether it be theater, singing, concerts, orchestra, and it's been an integral part of my life for the past decade. I would go as far as saying I associate a large part of my personality with performing and just being on stage and putting on a show or expressing an art form for other people. So I've missed that part of my life a lot this year. Back in the spring, I was actually going to be Tommy in the musical The Who's Tommy, but that got canceled because of COVID. We were about a month out from the show, and I remember our last day of school, actually. We were actually in rehearsal when we found out that school was closing due to coronavirus. And after that show got canceled because of COVID, I was really unsure when the next time I'd be able to perform for other people would be, especially live. So this fall, when I found out my high school was doing a virtual production of the play It's a Wonderful Life, I was super excited. This is the moment I'd been waiting for. The moment to finally be able to do a show, the moment to finally be able to perform again, especially live. So I eagerly auditioned and I ended up getting the lead role of George Bailey. But if I'm being completely honest, I did have my doubts about this show. I had never been in a show online, I didn't know what that experience would be like, and the thought of having to do a show on Zoom was a little intimidating and honestly not the most exciting thing for me personally because it's just not the same as performing in person. But after rehearsing for It's a Wonderful Life for about the last month, I think I'm qualified to explain some of the good things and some of the drawbacks of being in a virtual production or an online play or an online performance in general. Alright, so I just got out of school and now I'm going to rehearsal, which is in about like 20 minutes. Usually my rehearsals are about like 20 minutes after I get out of school. It's a dress rehearsal, so I have to get in costume, get all my props set up, get my computer ready, and then I should be good. So the first thing you do when you're in a play is you have to learn your part. This means memorizing lines, learning your cues, understanding the character you're playing and what their objective is. And honestly, for the most part, this part of the show wasn't really changed despite the show being online. It actually stayed pretty much the same. I still had to learn my lines, I still had to practice my cues, and I still had to practice different characterizations and acting choices. So overall, doing the show online didn't really take away from the personal acting experience of getting to learn your part and practicing your own lines and your own decisions that you're going to make during the show. The next thing I want to talk about is rehearsal. And usually in a normal play, you spend every rehearsal working on different parts of the show, and then as the show gets closer, you end up putting all those parts together. And for the most part, that was pretty similar for this show, except for the fact that we didn't really need to rehearse any blocking or choreography because there was none. So most of our rehearsals would entail going through the first or second act and kind of alternating every day which act we were gonna do, and just reading through the script and working on making different decisions as actors and actresses, and practicing certain movements where we would hand off a prop to the camera and then the other person would like pick it up on the other side. So that's basically what rehearsals entailed. It was less emphasis on kind of the visual aspect and more emphasis on like the acting aspect because we couldn't do a lot of stuff visually for the show. So one of my favorite things about theater is the use of props and costumes because these really bring you into the world of the play and make it a lot more realistic and make you feel like you are the character that you're playing. So luckily for this show, we actually got to go to our school and pick up some props to use for the show. I got to wear like a dress shirt and a suit jacket, and I had all these certain props like suitcase, some books, some letters, some rose petals, a rose, a top hat, a winter hat, like all sorts of stuff, a scarf. I got to have a lot of different costumes and a lot of different props that I was able to use to make the show more realistic. In the world of doing a play on Zoom, it's really nice to have props because it brings you closer to what a play would normally be like. So before I get into the actual performance, I want to talk about staging for this show. And obviously in a normal show, you're able to stage people on an actual stage using different set pieces, different props, and all sorts of things, and you're kind of able to block the show on an actual physical space. But obviously online you can't do that. So what we did is we utilized Zoom and the Zoom windows to kind of create a set in itself online. So that would entail having people in their Zoom boxes, and we would place them next to each other, kind of like this, where one character would be here and another character would be over here, and we could kind of utilize that to create a more realistic staged piece where it looks like these people are actually on stage together or actually in the same place. And we'd do things like would look at our character, so I could look at another character over here and they could look back at me and stuff like that. And now for my final thoughts on what it was like being in a play online. So going into it, I just wasn't sure if it would be as much fun as a regular show. And kind of what I learned is the rehearsals themselves weren't as great as an in-person show, obviously. There was a lot less socializing that could go on, so that was a drawback. And the fact that there was no blocking was definitely a drawback. I really enjoy blocking and kind of the parts of the show that make it as realistic as possible. So that was a drawback. And another drawback was just the uncertainty of doing a show online. There are so many technological things that can go wrong. Someone's internet could crash, someone's computer could freeze. There's so many variables that could go wrong and ruin the performance, which made it a bit stressful. After doing 3 shows and kind of finishing the whole process, I can confidently say I'm really glad I did it. Being able to perform live, whether it be in person or online, always has that thrill. The adrenaline is unreal, and just being able to have that feeling of putting out a piece of art that's been worked on for so long live in front of all these people that were watching was really awesome, and I'm really, really happy I got the experience. Basically, we had 3 shows of It's a Wonderful Life. They all went great. I think what made these shows great and which made these shows a lot of fun to be in is because we weren't able to do staging, do a ton with props. It made us more aware of the energy that we had to put out to make this a really awesome performance. And I think when a show has that intensity and that much energy in it, it really makes it more entertaining to watch and a lot more fun to be a part of. We definitely upped the energy every night, and by the end of it, I think it was a really awesome show, and it was a ton of fun to be a part of. I'm really glad I got this experience of being George Bailey, because it's such a famous role that Jimmy Stewart played, and I think to be able to say I did that role, to have experienced that, is a really special thing that I'm gonna cherish for a really long time. And with that, I will be back for my next virtual show.